Hi, I'm Shontra Powell, and I'm the Proven Not Perfect podcast host and a best-selling author on Amazon. Do any of these words call out to you? Drive, ambition, doing, leading, creating. These words call many of us, and sometimes to heroic impact. This is all good until we forget about our own self and our own self needs, mainly care. My Village of All-Stars, they not only command position, but they command influence. Well, there's always a backstory. I'm myself, Shontra Powell. I've had to put myself on the sideline a few times, but I'm still in the game. I'm staying in the game. The only thing different about me is that I'm proven not perfect. Enjoy. Hey, Proven Not Perfect. This is Shontra Powell, and I have an amazing conversation for you today. In fact, this is so good. This is so good that we hung up the call and do what we do when I host a guest on this podcast. I spend a little time with the guest, just absorbing what just happened and agreeing that we both felt something really special that we were bringing forward in service to others. And we did this, and my guest was basically like, I want to share something that I have only ever shared one other time with this podcast community and the listeners, because the one other time that I shared it, it actually had an effect of being a life-supporting bit of information for another. And man, she said that, and I said, "Are you sure you're sure?" And she said, "Yes." And we roll the tape again. The reason that I tell you this is because you need to listen to this podcast for the first ending, which is not trivial. It's a typical Shontra Powell, 40-minute podcast, right? We'll say goodbye, and then you'll hear part 2. So it's dropping just like that. Part 1, and then part 2. So without further ado, I get out the way and I allow you to enjoy my conversation with Carol Dover, President and CEO at Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. This one's good, y'all. You're going to learn a lot about some relevant hot topics as it relates to the state of Florida, and you don't want to miss it. Carol Dover.
Yes, Shontra. Hello, lady.
When South Florida connects with North Florida, it's a beautiful thing.
It absolutely is. And ironically, we're both talking about storms ahead that we're about to have. So welcome to summer.
Welcome to summer. And probably what is true is that today, I'm really glad that we're on the ground right now and not in the sky, because that's probably a bumpy one.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Me too.
Oh my God. Well, so look, I first have to start by just acknowledging your career success, 30 years leading in the hospitality and lodging industry, lodging and restaurant industry. So formally, it is the Florida Lodging and Restaurant Association.
Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association.
There we go. That was a test.
Yeah.
That was a test for you, not for me. Totally you.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny because we were FRA when I was first hired, the Florida Restaurant Association, and the Florida Hotel Motel Association ran upon some financial challenging times, and they asked us to take them over. And it made a little bit more sense.
When was that about?
2006.
Okay.
And it made a little more sense to be FLRA, Florida Lodging and Restaurant Association. However, my restaurant guys said, nope. We're not doing that. We are taking them over. They're not taking us over. And we will be the lead title. So it is the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association.
Okay, that's a little bit of insider information and background. That's pretty fantastic.
Yep.
So 30 years. So tell me what was going on in the industry when you first got there 30 years ago, and how does that compare to what's going on now? Like, what were some of the big themes back when you were, just cutting your teeth on it?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question, Chandra, because one of the things that we have learned, or I've learned over, a 30 years, but this industry, but, a span of 40 plus years in my career, is that it truly is a round world. Issues that we're dealing with today, ironically, are some of the exact same issues that we dealt with 30 years ago. Minimum wage,
Mhm.
labor,
Mhm.
workforce, housing, immigration,
Mhm.
cost of commodities, fuel. It's just really interesting that we just keep seeing a lot of the same issues, some of which we're working very hard
Mhm.
to try to get settled, which would be like immigration.
Yeah.
It's one that can has been kicked down the road for decades.
Wow.
And no matter what party is in office, they want to work on it, and then the other party doesn't, and then the other party takes over and they want to work on it, and they just can't seem to get on the same page, which is a shame because we need to fix it. For an industry like ours,
Well,
we need to
especially for a
fix it.
state like ours too, right?
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
I think about
Exactly.
the state of Florida and the memories
Mhm.
for most families in the United States,
That's right.
that take you back to the
That's
state of
right.
Florida at some point to
That's right.
experience the beaches, to experience the amusement parks, to experience
That's
all
right.
between. As you get
Yep.
older, you
Yep.
grow with it, right? Then you're coming for the retreats and the nightlife
Yep.
in the South or wherever you
That's
go.
right.
So,
Yep. And
and I love
yeah.
that you said that you sort of remind us of how circular this whole thing is, and how
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter what your viewpoint is at the end of the day. The same things are really important.
That's exactly right. It is so true. We jokingly, in all due respect, as I lobby federally as well as state.
Sure.
State, 60 days. Well, this session was a little bit interesting, but the legislature has to pass one bill,
Yeah.
and that's the budget. That's it. Now, every year they pass more than that, but it comes, it goes, it moves. We know what happened. But federally, we call it like moving and turning a battleship. It just, we laugh about, we could literally take the papers that we're lobbying today and just put them in a drawer and pull them out next year, because we'll go back and we'll be lobbying the same issues. And it's frustrating, but I'm hopeful. You know how in life sometimes things have to get to their worst boiling point
Yes.
before they are taken seriously enough that they're fixed. And I hope that immigration will be one of those, because farmers are hurting, construction is hurting, hospitality and tourism,
Yeah.
it's critical. We need our immigrants. We do not want the criminals.
That's right.
And we don't want the ones that that maybe that came across the border in the last 4 to 5 years, because we don't have any we don't really have a handle on who they are.
Yes.
But we do know who many of our immigrants are that have been here for decades
Yes.
and have worked in our hotels and worked in our restaurants. And they're not criminals, they're here to work.
Yeah.
And we are advocates of some form of a essential worker program that will give them a work visa and allow them to get a legal driver's license to go to and from work, a social security card that says that they are here on a work permit only, so
Yeah.
they can pay taxes and come out of hiding. but
Yes.
they will not be citizens. And that's where we have this great piece of legislation
Yes.
that we hired some of the best immigration lawyers in the country. And that's what it says. In a nutshell, it says exactly what I just described. It is not amnesty. They
Yeah.
do not become a legal citizen. They become a essential worker with the right to go to work. And that's it. And pay taxes, which is a novel idea.
Well, it is. I mean, it is a novel idea because I can remember, I've done global secondments in my career where there was a work visa that was filed for me
Mhm,
to be,
mhm,
a white collar professional working in the
mhm,
finance industry in Europe,
mhm.
right? Um, it's no different than that. And what I love about what you're pointing out as well is that there comes a time where if we want to see things move forward and advance for the good of everybody, that we think about the compromise that is required for us all.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I tend to strongly believe that it's times like this where it takes, yes, there's understanding one another's viewpoint, but then there's also thinking about the greater good. And if I may, and
Right.
please inviting you to correct me if my facts are wrong, but as I think about, even just the state of Florida, the amount of revenue that, quite
Yeah.
frankly, you oversee as president and CEO of this entity
Yeah.
that comes to this state on an annual basis is
Mhm,
Fortune 500 level as a public
mhm,
entity.
mhm.
And no different than if we were thinking Fortune 500 as a public entity, we would be thinking about what are the things that protect the P&L, right? And
That's right.
there's always a component of, are you taking care of the employee base, the people? And
Right.
I
Right.
just don't know how you get that equation solved in a state where not everybody wants to be in the service industry. Not everybody does. So
No.
how do
Mm-mm.
you democratize that, but at the same time support security? Okay, I'll give you that as a compromise. So these are
That's right.
tough things. These are tough things. So I have to ask you this because you're the first person who has a title of lobbyist, and a portion of that in your responsibility. So I'd
Mhm.
really love for those women who are in career, who maybe are in a particular industry, maybe the same, maybe different, who are finding themselves really passionate about legislation and regulation and change, and they believe that the voice and the role of a lobbyist is something that's calling them. Can you maybe just unpack a little bit? What does it entail to be a lobbyist? What would you say are the key skill sets? And what makes somebody really good at it?
Well, I would first start by saying it's important to be a good communicator and be a people person.
Yeah.
But you can be a good communicator and you can be a people person. But if you have lack of integrity, I
Mm,
think you should stay as far away from the process as
mm,
you can,
mm,
because integrity is what makes good, sound policy.
mm.
When you can when people can trust what you have to say. I mean, like I would hope that I could say that in all the years that I have lobbied an issue, I have always been one that tells both sides. I
Yes,
don't just go in and tell a member our side of the story, because somebody's going to come in the door right behind me
that's right.
and say why my idea might be a bad idea.
That's right.
So I always feel that it's important to build that trust and build that integrity by members appreciate that you say, okay, now that I've told you
Mm,
why I'm advocating for this piece of legislation on the behalf, by the way, of Florida's largest employer, Florida's economic engine. I mean, we have to remember that keeping our industry solid and fluid is critical to the state's budget and the state's economy. But
absolutely.
with all that, Integrity is so important. And to the women and the girls or whatever, the ladies that are thinking, whether they're really young and they think, oh, that just looks like a great career. I have a saying that I try to teach to my daughters, and I say to the women on my staff is never cross that line. Never cross the line. It may sound fun on that night when everybody's having a great time. And, in our industry, there is a little bit of
a lot of entertaining. It's a lot of entertainment, I imagine.
Yep. And you have to be very careful to balance cocktail hour and where you go and who you're with the position that you're representing.
Yes.
Because once you get painted with a bad brush, it is so hard to undo it. It is so hard. And so I always try to say, just remember, there is a line. And many times women are asked to cross that line. Don't. That's all I can say is don't.
Carol, you're speaking from a history. I mean, honestly, we've gone through this movement of since the early 90s until now, where we've seen all sorts of movements, Me Too, otherwise, and there really is a confidence by which women are speaking up about some of the less than favorable experiences that career has put them in. And I think what you're saying is it doesn't matter what career you choose, right?
Right. That's right.
Understand very clearly that you are your biggest advocate, both in a compromise situation or an advanced professional situation. You are your biggest advocate, and that's important to understand and be responsible with that.
Right. That's exactly right.
Excellent advice. So,
and never forget that you're representing whatever company you work for.
Yes.
I happen to represent an industry that has, I have over 10,000 members. We are a massively large, but I feel like every time I'm out front, I'm representing the group as a whole, not Carol, not, my best friends. I'm representing the industry, and it's critical that when my members see what I have to say or what I'm doing, that they're proud and they feel that that we handled ourselves with the best of intention and the highest of integrity.
I love that. Beautiful. Okay, so here's a question.
Okay.
In particular, as I think about being in the hospitality space, there's a grace under pressure that the best restaurants and the best hotel experiences that one can have anywhere in the world, there's a grace under pressure that I see the leaders really navigate that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, as you are sort of representing this entity for the state. What's one personal practice or mindset that helps you with grace, even on the tough days?
Well, I have a lot of sayings, and my staff would, if they were all sitting around me, I could not say a word, and they could all tell you what my sayings are because they hear them all the time. I think probably one of the biggest ones that will allow you to have grace under fire is to never burn a bridge. And that's one of my biggest sayings is the bridge that you burn today after decades of experience, I can tell you that one day you're going to need that bridge. You may think at the time, I'll never need it. I don't care if it ever crosses in front of me again. It will. I always say that God has a sense of humor, and you might torch that bridge, and then he will put it right back in front of you one day to see how you're going to handle it. So I say be a carpenter. Build bridges. Don't burn them, because you will need that bridge. So build a bridge. And that takes grace under fire many, many times. You will get challenged. And I can't tell you how many times it would have been so much easier to just light a match, torch it, don't ever come back to me again with, and I have to think, how do I navigate building this bridge instead of burning it?
I bet.
And
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's it. No, that's probably one of the most challenging parts in life, not just my job. That's just life.
I was going to say, Carol, absolutely right. I think in life, but I also think that it ties back to being successful in your role in particular, right? It's always thinking about what I'm hearing is very much sage advice. Always think long game. It's so easy
Yeah,
to sort of
right. That's right.
always
That's
think
right.
long game, right?
Exactly right.
So
Exactly right.
I want to roll the bus back a little bit because you've got folks that are
Okay.
listening that are wondering, okay, how did this journey come about, right? And so, what did little Carol dream of becoming, and how far is that from the woman you are today?
I'm going to send you a video that was done on my biggest honor of my career, which was the Hall of Fame, Tourism Hall of Fame, because I felt that they recapped this incredibly well. At the very end, my husband tells a quick little story about how when we were newlyweds, practically, I was at an event and said, "Do you see that man over there in that suit?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, and it's a true story, "I want to be him someday." And that him was the CEO of the Florida Restaurant Association.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
I did.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I've wanted this job. My husband says since I was born, but I would say probably right after I graduated from college with a hotel and restaurant degree. So it is my field and my passion. I grew up in the industry in Orlando. It's truly kind of all I know. I had the honor of going to work for the beer industry of Florida. Tallahassee is not the hotel metro, particularly back then, the big hotel mecca. Out of Florida State Hotel and Restaurant School, you're guaranteed a job. And mine was Houston Oaks in Houston. But I was madly in love and didn't want to leave. And so I went to work for the beer industry of Florida. And that's where I cut my teeth on association management, lobbying. And, now I look back on those 10 years. That's where my first 10 years was spent. In this job, we spend a lot of time dealing with the alcohol laws, as you can imagine. Hotels and restaurants both sell and deal with a lot of alcohol issues. So that 10 years was invaluable for my walk and journey that I, at the time, had no idea. I just knew that I used to say, I love trade association world, but I would love to run a trade association that's either hotels or restaurants. And so I got the restaurant one, and then lo and behold, who would have ever known that we would merge with hotels, later, and a little over 10 years in this job, we merged. So it has, and it's been an interesting.
Manifesting before that was a word, Carol. I just got to say.
Do what?
You were manifesting before that was like a relevant word.
Yeah, maybe I was. My career walk has been incredibly blessed. I feel I love what I do. I've loved every job. But I look back on the bridges that were there for me, and every step of the way made me one step closer to being ready for this job. And I didn't even know it. I went on later in my career to become hotel and restaurant director for the state of Florida. Loved that job. but I was the regulator. So then I spent years learning about the regulation of the industry and wearing that dark, deep hat sometimes that our members don't like, the big inspector people that come along. And I oversaw that agency for a couple of years. And then I was asked to go inside the governor's office and be deputy chief of staff for the governor.
Wow.
And I didn't want to do that. I did not want to do that. I loved being hotel and restaurant director. I was so in my swim lane and just loved it. But I went kicking and screaming a little bit. I turned it down, and then I got a phone call from a good senator friend of mine who said, okay, just, you little kid, you young little thing, you certainly don't understand. But when you get a call in a few minutes from the governor's office, again, the answer is yes, sir. And when do I start? Because you don't say no when asked to, sir. Yes. So I went, I loved it. Then I learned what I call behind wizard's curtain, the back of the house.
Yeah.
And I've also learned that the wizard changes every 4 to 8 years.
Yes, it is.
But one thing doesn't change. Once you know and understand the back of the house, if you will, behind the curtain, that too has been invaluable to me in my career. So every single step has built another piece of the bridge to get me to where I sit today. And I feel incredibly blessed and fortunate for it.
So when the call comes, you really take the time to appreciate the ask and also the opportunity. I think it's something that's really huge. And I compare and parallel even my corporate experiences, right? It's no different, where you get a call and an opportunity. And certainly we all have the privilege of saying, thank you, no thank you. But you're leaving an impression that you're not to those experiences. And so, so along.
I'm sorry, but I have to say this. And I truly, not every job offer is meant for everyone. I mean, I know people who have come to me and said, oh, and like, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. Yes. In my case, truly,
how'd you know?
God just laid down another stepping stone for me, another stepping, and then every stepping stone. Now I look back and I know that there was a much bigger power planning this walk of life for me to get me where I am today.
Wow.
And it's been an amazing journey.
Would you say that you sort of, there was a piece about every decision that you made to know that even if it wasn't something that you thought you actively were calling for, it felt like the right thing to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, it may, I can't say that I didn't question things. Like a quick story. My husband and I lost a house to a fire on 7 days before the election, of which we lost that election. So I was going to be out of a job. And Tom Gallagher had won insurance commissioner and called me and said, look, I don't want you to worry about the fact that y'all lost the governor's office. I have a job for you. And I want you to come be the first woman fire marshal in the state.
Wow.
And of course, talk about a job that you're thinking, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. He was like, you just lost a house to fire. You understand the importance of this. And I'm thinking, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to. That walk and journey gave me insight on an issue that I didn't know at the time was going to be one of, in many times, the biggest issue, particularly in the hotel world, because fire marshal laws in hotels are unbelievably complicated and important.
Absolutely.
And so I learned all about the fire marshal and the regulatory side of it and how it works and what our members have to put up. I mean, sometimes it is a challenge. And so that's been another piece of the puzzle that I look back and I'm like, I didn't want to do that job, but oh my gosh, I got in it. And that's the other thing. Sometimes you get delivered things that maybe you think may not be exactly what I want, or thank you, God, just for letting me have this job opportunity. But it's not really. Do the best you can do in every. If I was an elevator operator, I would have to learn everything about the elevator. Do the best you can do, because I can honestly say I did that. And every time I question, is this right for me? I went in with, I'm going to do it better than anybody. I'm going to try to find perfection in this job.
Right.
And I really think that attitude is what always opened another door, right? There's then you look back and you go, I guess I did make a lot of really good friends in that job. And then I got offered another job, another step. So
I am excited for the people that are listening to this, because you're dropping truths. I just have to just double click on a couple that you just sort of threw out there, and I just want to make sure people pay attention to this. It's not always the glamorous, pretty, sexy thing that you had in your mind.
right.
It's interesting. I believe that sometimes we will have a vision of what we want to do and what we aspire to. And we have this false sense of expectation that we can just, like, I dream of Jeannie, click our fingers and we're there, right? And what people don't share enough, I think, which Proven Not Perfect is changing that, is the journey isn't a snap of the fingers overnight.
No, it's not
known in advance. So if I go back to Carol in the decision to take the appointment by the governor, and Carol in the decision to answer the call of Tom Gallagher, there were things at that time that you knew, but there was so much more that you didn't know. And at that moment, it couldn't have looked like you were further away from what you said you wanted to be. And
True.
man, whether it's my story, whether it's other stories of amazing women that are proven in what they do, is this acknowledgement at a certain point that, man, it's almost funny that if I would have talked myself out of that road that I could have talked myself out of, there's no way I would have been prepared to be here. Like, there's one thing to prepare, it's another thing to be prepared for success. And I do believe that if you anchor on the wrong things, you miss that point. Yeah. Wow. That is so good.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I would love to hear, kind of in the spirit of that, making the pivots and following the call. Is there a leadership moment that you remember that made you actually feel proven? Even if it was imperfect, you were like, you know what? I feel like I know what I'm doing. I feel like I know what I'm talking about. I feel like I know who I am.
Wow, that's tough. I've had a lot of career blessings and milestones that picking, Florida had a horrendous tax that was imposed on the hotel and restaurant industry many, many years ago called the drink tax. It was very, very burdensome, and you don't undo taxes usually. That's tough. But when Governor Bush became governor, he knew that I was passionate about this issue, and he committed to me that in his tenure that we would repeal the drink tax. No state in the country had ever repealed an alcohol tax at that time. And repealing a tax is just not easy.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget the day.
That's revenue that the state is counting on. And
over then 150 million at the time. Today it would be 2 and 3 times that, because
That's what
we're
I'm
going back.
thinking. Yeah, I just
We're
need
going
to
way
set
back.
the table so that everybody understands. Like, that's not a trivial amount of money in the state of Florida. Entertainment.
No, and it was so burdensome on our members, the calculation, and you had to do it by the ounce, and it was a lot. And I'll never forget the day, and God love John Thrasher, who we just lost, was our Speaker of the House at the time, and went on later to be president of Florida State University. Wonderful friend of mine. He will forever be missed. But as speaker, and then Jeb as governor, I'll never forget that final passage, and it happened. And I do remember that walk across the street back to my office very late at night, because it didn't pass till wee hours, and everybody high-fiving and jumping, and I could people screaming from the balconies, you did it. And it wasn't a me, it was a we, it was a team. But it certainly was a validation that if you work on something hard and long enough, I have another saying: never give up. Never give up. It was a incredibly long and arduous fight, but I was determined to never give up. And so I think that was one of the, many, I don't know if it necessarily fits in the leadership whole per se, but it took a lot of hours and a lot of conversations. And again, never burning that bridge when people would look me in the eye and tell me, it ain't going to happen. Go away. Don't bring that issue to me again. I'm not going to vote on it, and it did happen because tenacity, and we never gave up, and we fought it with integrity.
And I was going to say that, and you went right there. I was going to take you back to your earlier points of integrity. As we are in the season that we're in, where it's easier for us to point out our differences in thinking and views and all the things, right? I mean, this is just where we are in life. With a lot of the skills that it takes to get thinking across a majority of different viewpoints, what would you say if you could just, you've got the airways of the world? What would you say are 3 things that you would love to just say? Think about this as you feel either polarizing or polarized. Think about this. What would those think about things be? What would your letter to us all be about? Because I believe that this is an appropriate question to ask someone in that skill set, right? Because you can't turn over a tax typically ever, and you certainly can't do it without complete support or majority support. Yep. And so, stepping aside from all politics and all the things, what would you tell us? How do we start to get back to a civil discourse of listening and adding to our own view?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I can do it in a couple ways. I'm going to do it in 3 words instead of 3 thoughts.
Love it.
Art of compromise.
Ooh.
I feel that we have lost the art to compromise because we are so polarized. It's become my way or the highway. I either get what I want or we get nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I told you we didn't sit down and do a lot of compromising on, one of the biggest compromises on the repeal of the drink tax was, of course, I wanted it all in one fell swoop. No, we did it in 3 years, 3 different sessions. We did a third and a third, and then 9/11 hit. and I
Wow.
had to pull it off the table. I didn't have to. I was asked and cautioned that it would be in my best interest to pull it down in year 3. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so we did. So guess what? Year 4, everybody remembered that we compromised. We did what was needed at the time. So the art of compromise is a lost art. I genuinely feel that it is so many times, whether it was this session in Tallahassee, whether it's what's going on in DC federally, um, people need to learn to sit down and close the door and come up with, what can I give you and you give me, and we all go out and hold hands and call it a victory, because we can't keep on like this. We're getting further and further apart.
Yeah.
And that's terrifying, honestly, to
It's
me.
terrifying. And also, I think that if you have a genuine desire to follow, a Christian value system, it takes you
Mhm.
on a path that separates us more than brings us together. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, we're meant to
yeah,
be together.
yeah,
And I love that art of compromise. And I guess one thing that came out loud and clear too is patience,
yeah.
because
Patience.
I
Yeah,
think what I heard in your story is even when that year 3 was the year that, okay, now it's
yeah,
environmentally, the world, certainly the United States, had experienced the biggest disaster
yeah,
since, a world war. There was a level of sensitivity that was required. And for you to say, you know what, that's more important than me
yeah,
pushing an agenda, that speaks to the patience that I also think is not present enough.
yeah.
Um,
Agree,
and
agree,
making that space.
agree. Yep,
Wow.
yeah.
All right. So I was going to ask you for some wisdom that you would leave behind, but honestly, art of the compromise pretty much there. I have to say. All right. For fun, what's your favorite
Okay.
thing to do for fun? Tell us about that.
Well, it's my horses.
Yes.
That's not a secret.
Yes.
My husband's dad bought this farm in 1941. He was born and raised here. We've now had 3 generations born and raised here. I grew up as a child that always dreamed of riding, but could never afford it. I lost my dad when I was very young. My mom fought hard to, raise 3 kids and put us through school. And so I guess as a kid, I used to just think about, gosh, I wish I could ride like some of my friends. Well, that opportunity was provided for me by my father-in-law, and I now have a beautiful horse farm, and I still ride and I still compete, and um, so it is my passion, and it's also my quiet place. I people laugh about, I'll go muck a stall and drive a tractor, and yes, I'll put on a suit and go to the Capitol, but I love farm life. I was painting fences Friday to get ready for a big clinic that I had this weekend. So, it's but it's it takes me back to just the simple reality. Living on a farm is just a very special place.
It keeps you centered, I bet.
It does. I love it. Go to the barn, turn on my music, you know, and just be with the animals. It's really special.
Find a happy place. I think that's the thing that I'm going to leave
Yep.
behind for.
That is my happy place. Yeah. That's one of my many happy places. I have several, but that's one of my many. And I'm just incredibly blessed to have that in my life. Now, like my granddaughter lives on the farm as well with her mom and dad, and she's quite the rider. And so there are days I find myself in the barn with her, and I think, these days will be gone one day. I mean, she'll grow up and she'll hopefully be married and have kids. But I'm grateful that I put her in Pony Club when she was 5, and we have spent a lot of time in the barn playing with horses. And now she's quite the rider. And so I look at her in awe of her abilities. And so but it's special. Not everybody gets to do that, right? So
I
it's
need to
fun.
do something to manifest for me because, girl, you are batting 1,000. Whether it's taking over the organization to raising someone who is truly embodying what you saw for yourself as a child. Carol, you are a truly special person. You really are. I think
Oh,
that
you're
ability
very sweet.
and a grace, an integrity, a generosity, a hospitality around your very being. I've really come to appreciate you as a friend and just love you so much as a person. And I appreciate you sharing just your wisdom with the Proven Not Perfect community. We are a community of women who are driven for success, wearing many hats. And, we are all inspired by being in conversation with others who are succeeding and driving. It encourages us and inspires us to keep going. So thank you.
Well, coming from you, Shontra, means more to me than you'll know. I feel a very special bond with you. I admire you. I have the utmost respect for you. You carry the grace and integrity that people should crave to have, because the minute I met you, I knew that you had a very special, sweet soul, great heart, wonderful Christian lady, and you're just beautiful inside and out. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about life.
Oh, thank you.
With
We'll see you soon.
Love you, lady. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Okay, just like I told you, there is a part 2. Here we go. Enjoy. So just like any good podcast, it's always what happens in the conversation. And for me with Proven Not Perfect, it's what happens when I click end and the conversation continues with my very special guests and friends. And this one hit me really straight to the heart because we touched on it in the conversation, and the revelation is so compelling, and I believe so potentially healing, so potentially saving to other people. And I think sometimes when we in particular hear leaders that we're drawn to for one reason or another, it can't help but be externally driven initially, because that's who we are as people. And we see whatever attributes we see and we respond to that. And that usually becomes the doorway for us deciding that we want to know more about them. But the basis of Proven Not Perfect is there's always a story. There's always the pieces that you don't see, that you don't know, that I shared in my first book. And when we said goodbye to you publicly and kept our conversation going, and my dear friend Carol shared with me a little bit more about losing her father as a young girl and her principle for do not give up. I asked her for permission to open the podcast again and just provide a little bit of a snack, because I believe conversations have the ability to heal and to save and certainly to bless. And so with that, Carol, I would love for you to just share a little bit of what you shared with me about why your coaching to others is so precise and specific the way that it is.
Well, thank you, Shontra, for giving me this opportunity to share something very private and very personal. As I told you after we talked, until I was honored enough to receive the inductee to the Florida Tourism Hall of Fame, and I knew I had to give an acceptance speech, and I just was overwhelmed with, as much as I publicly speak, that one I couldn't really figure out what I was going to say. I tossed and turned and at night, and I've held something inside of me my whole life. I didn't even tell my children until they were adults. And I never talk about it. And so I decided if I was ever going to talk about it, that night on stage was the time to do it. And that was that, yes, I lost my dad when I was very young, 12, soon to be 13. But my dad committed suicide. And it's just something that was so publicly unacceptable, especially at that phase in my life when I was so young. It's much more talked about today than it was back then. And it's what I believe gave me the tenacity. I mean, even at that very young age, like my mom was left with 3 kids. um, I had to go to work. And at 14, I started waiting tables and I worked at a hotel. My mom had a very dear friend in Orlando that was a hotelier, and he said, "Let Carol come learn how to work the front desk." So at 14 years old, I'm, you know, taking on jobs that I didn't even realize later in life were going to be what gave me the passion for this industry. But you know, my dad gave up. I mean, when you think about suicide, as much as it kills me to have this conversation, I know and remember my mom feeling like my dad gave up and left her with 3 kids to raise. And so I just remember being indelibly imprinted in my soul at that young age that I was never going to give up. No matter what cards life dealt me, giving up is not an option. So that night, I shared that, and I was surprised. I waited until a room of close to 1,000 people to tell something I've
Go big.
held
You go
inside
big
of
here.
me. Oh, yeah, if you're going to go big. But the number of people that came up to me that night or sent me texts and cards and emails that, this had touched their life. The suicide touches so many people. You told me about a friend of yours,
Yes.
and you really realize talking about it is what gave some healing to me. My family was there, my children were there, obviously some healing for them, but also made me realize that message of never give up resonated to so many people who later told me, I will never give up. You gave me something that I've needed, and I needed to hear it. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share something so personal, but I believe is what made me today the person that I am. And so I appreciate you allowing me to share it.
Oh my gosh, Carol, honestly, I am privileged to open the line. I'm thankful for you allowing me to do so. I think that it is too easy to judge people from the exterior of what we see. And when we truly get vulnerable and we truly share that we're no different from one another, man,
Yeah,
it's different. So I thank you.
that's right.
And
Well, thank you.
I'll talk to you soon. I will really let you.
Okay. Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, enjoy that
All
form.
right.
All right.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye, sweetie. Bye.